You know, for literally thousands of years, all across the globe, in just about every culture you can think of, humans have been doing something, well, something that seems to go against our most basic instinct for survival. We're talking about fasting. Not because there's no food, but as a deliberate choice. So let's dive in and try to understand this ancient and incredibly powerful practice.
It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? I mean, we live in a world that is constantly screaming at us to consume more. More food, more information, more entertainment, just more. So why on earth would we choose to intentionally stop? It kind of suggests that maybe, just maybe, the thing we're truly hungriest for isn't something you can eat at all. And this is not some new health fad, okay? This is a deeply human act of will, this intentional pause that's been woven right into the fabric of our history. You see it with ancient prophets in the desert, and you see it with people today in the middle of our busiest cities. Choosing to fast is, well, it's a profound statement.
Okay, now I love how this is framed here. Think about it. Fasting is like a universal language spoken by all of humanity. But, and this is the interesting part, the specific rules, the dialects, if you will, they change dramatically depending on where you are and what tradition you're looking at.
So let's look at a few of these different dialects. During the Islamic month of Ramazan, it's a total fast from all food and drink, but only from sunrise to sunset. Then you have the Christian tradition of Lent, where it's often about giving up certain types of food like meat for 40 days straight. In some Hindu traditions, like during the 9 nights of Navratri, the fast might mean avoiding grains and certain spices. And then for the Jewish holy day of Yom Kippur, it's a complete 25-hour fast from everything. So you see, the forms are all different, but that core idea of intentional restraint is always there. And that leads us to a much, much deeper question.
Right, so this is where we shift from the how to the real why. This question, it just cuts right to the chase. When you start to peel back the layers of physical hunger, what do you actually find underneath? What are the impulses, the fears, the little attachments that suddenly pop up when you just stop feeding them?
And here's where it gets really fascinating. Because even with all those different dialects we just talked about, researchers and scholars have found that the core purpose, the deep intention behind the fast, is incredibly consistent. It turns out there are 3 powerful, shared meanings that you can find in almost every single tradition. And here they are: purification, training, and remembrance. You can almost think of them as 3 levels, or 3 steps, with each one taking you into a deeper state of awareness. So let's break these down one by one.
First up, we have purification. Now, on a physical level, this is where your body gets to do some house cleaning. You know, processes like autophagy kick in, but on a spiritual level, it's about clearing out all the mental clutter. When you stop giving in to every little impulse, that background noise of craving and distraction, it starts to fade. And the fast becomes this kind of mirror, showing you what your soul is actually hungry for. Okay, number 2, training. Fasting is, in a way, like a gym for your willpower. It's a very real, very practical exercise in self-control. And the logic is actually pretty simple but so powerful. If you can learn to consciously manage a primal impulse like hunger, well, then you can start to get a handle on other, more subtle impulses. You know, that flash of anger, that wave of jealousy, or that sudden spike of pride.
And here's a perfect example of this in practice. In Islam, the whole point of the Ramazan fast is to develop something called taqwa. And taqwa isn't just about not eating or drinking. It's about cultivating a deep state of self-restraint, this constant, heightened awareness of the divine. It's discipline, but for a sacred purpose. And that brings us to the third purpose, remembrance. So much of our daily life is just autopilot, right? Fasting is the ultimate pattern interrupt. That feeling of physical weakness reminds us that we're vulnerable. The pang of hunger connects us to those in the world who live with it every day, and it builds empathy. And in that feeling of humility, it carves out a space to remember our connection to something bigger than ourselves.
This quote just sums it up so beautifully. The physical feeling of an empty stomach gets transformed into a spiritual alarm clock. It's a signal telling you to stop, to listen, and to pay attention to that deeper hunger we all have for meaning and purpose.
So, how can we think about all this in a modern context? Well, you could almost call fasting an ancient protocol for consciousness. I absolutely love this phrase, the ego's debug mode. It's like running a systems check on yourself, where you temporarily shut down all the non-essential programs just to see how the core operating system is really running. And really, this is the most important takeaway of all. The whole point isn't about what you're giving up, the sacrifice or the denial.
That's just the tool. The real goal is about what awakens inside you in that empty space you've created, the clarity, the compassion, the new awareness.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. In our world of constant, overwhelming access, maybe the greatest clarity doesn't come from adding more, but from intentionally taking something away. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes it's through restraint that we open our eyes to a much, much bigger view.